October 11th meeting of the Village Council to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pray that we support God for this day, for this village, for this opportunity, Lord, just to enjoy your creation. We say thank you. Lord, please be with us tonight in our thoughts and our actions, and may all of those honor you. We pray in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Now that leads us to public comment. Do we have anyone signed up?
I don't know what I'd like to throw out. I don't think I have to go to the podium now.
Okay, let's go state your name and address. Just kidding.
Let me just say that from the news that's been from what's been in the news this week, it frustrates me that people forget sometimes how powerful that piece of wood is, power of the podium. If you don't like the way things are going, you're more than welcome to come to the podium anytime you want and speak to your elected officials. I encourage everybody to do it. I may not necessarily agree with people that come to the podium, but I will fight tooth and nail to make sure they have the opportunity. They also have the power of the voting box. If they don't like who's sitting up here, they're more than welcome to replace us at any time. And that goes more than just for council. That goes for the school board, Board of Education, any elected official. And it just frustrates me that this week I've seen a lot in the news, people that forgot or seem to forget coming up in here and speaking is not an act of terrorism. So I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
I was about to give you a 30-minute Thursday morning.
No,
All right, so it leads us to additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda. I have one. I'd like to make 15A, if it's okay with George, a closed session for a code enforcement case or attorney advice.
Sure.
We have one that's still not resolved. And to start to look as bad as it did the first time. Does anyone else have anything else?
I'd like to have a discussion about the maintenance that was done at Park Gate. But I think we could just add that Parks and Rec, if that's all right.
Yeah, it's on my list to talk about.
Nothing else for me.
Anyone else?
I make a motion to accept it without change.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, and that leads us to the consent agenda.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, that brings us to the planning board report and any comments from our planner.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Last planning board. The last planning board meeting, really only discussed two main things. The RA4D district standards review. Had a good discussion on that and made a unanimous decision to suggest changes that you guys should receive in your packets. And the other thing we discussed was we had a public information meeting for Five Stones Church. Lots of really good discussion, lots of community turnout, mostly neighbors. However, many neighbors were not able to make it. Plus, we were given a large packet of information at the meeting to review. So taking those things into consideration, the majority of us voted to postpone the meeting till October to give those extra people a chance to speak, to review some of the information that we received. So that's still ongoing. I told everybody that it won't go past the next meeting, so we'll have some sort of resolution from that public information meeting by the end of our next planning board.
John, were you aware that there was no council members there at your planning board meeting by design?
No, it was not.
Okay.
The design, it was on the agenda.
No. I mean, normally one of us shows up at planning board meetings on a regular basis, and we made a conscious decision for no council members to be at that meeting. So it wasn't a mistake.
dotting our i's and our t's, crossing our t's. So when it comes before us, we are open and unbiased.
Okay.
All right.
That's all I have.
Mr. Hanson, do you have anything?
Not much to add. As John said, we'll continue that at the next meeting, and as of now, there's nothing else for the agenda, which is great.
Oh, that's right.
Normal stuff in the report that was given to you regarding activities of the past month. Nothing major to report beyond that. Normal busy, lots of phone calls, lots of emails, that kind of stuff.
All right, so that can lead us into the finance officer's report.
Okay. You have the September financials. And as far as anything unusual, we did pay for the landscaper to check the town hall irrigation system, and he did not find any leak. And he suggested checking the meter when we run the system to see how many gallons are going through.
Did
And
you have a chance to do that yet? Okay. Is it still off?
The system is
it's
off.
still off.
Have we seeded, aerated and seeded?
I understand that Union Grove was here on maybe Thursday and put out the flags. They had asked if we would, and I had asked Mike, but I guess it didn't get done. So I'm not sure exactly when they'll be aerating.
Do we need to have the sprinklers running for that after we aerate?
Yes. She also had the sprinklers running just to mark the heads. So you have a professional sprinkler guy check for a leak, and not a landscaper, a professional sprinkler guy mark all the heads, because you can't do that because it's not working.
Okay.
So it's cart before horse.
So the next step is,
Find the leak that the landscaper says doesn't exist. We all know exists because you walk out there, there's a big wet spot. That, I don't know how many different ways I can prove to you that there's a leak out there.
Do we have an irrigation repair service on the retainer, or do we?
Just the guy who installed it originally.
Okay.
Same company installed the problem.
Good guy, smart guy. He's got to come in, find the problem, fix it. Once the problem's fixed, mark all the heads, let the aeration be done. Or
Well, he came in and he said that there's not a leak. He did test the system, and he said there's not a leak.
The landscape,
The people that put in the system.
irrigation,
Mm-hmm. And he suggested, he did rough mathematical computation, and he suggested running the system and then seeing how many gallons the meter's saying we're using. If we do it by cycle, then we'll know whether it's every cycle's off, one cycle's off, what the problem is.
So as the system is now, it's working, it's just we've got a leak somewhere.
just turn it off.
We've turned it off because when it's on, we get $1,000 bills.
Okay.
The reason-
I'll stick a question on my part. Can we turn it on long enough for him to identify where the heads are and then let him aerate and see?
Well, apparently they knew where the heads were because they put the flags where the heads are.
Okay.
The reason I know there's a leak is because we had one really green spot right out here by the left and front door. When you walk across the grass, it's like walking on a wet sponge. The rest of the property is bone dry. Grass was brown in the middle of summer. I mean, it was just an obvious problem when you put your foot down and there's mud coming up on all sides. There's a leak there. When the rest of the property is dry, it's not getting water properly.
Okay.
So there's definitely a leak. I don't know why the landscaper or the sprinkler guy said there isn't. Because it's,
Mike, if the system had been off, if you guys turned the system off for a long time, it would have dried out.
yeah,
And a short run of the system would not make a leak apparent.
but I know for a fact that there's a leak and it's just outside that door on the left.
I had asked him about that area, and when he was here, it was not wet, and he said there was not a leak there.
And I throw my hands up, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done dealing with it. I've done my due diligence. I've figured out what the problem was. I've told everybody what the problem is. I'm not going to go out there with a shovel and dig it up. But I'm done.
Our other option is the landscaper said they would have 2 people come over here and run the system and do the meter markings, but it would cost us, I forget, maybe $250. We could do that as another option.
Versus $1,000 a month water bill.
Well, to find out what the problem is.
Well, I guess we could do that.
Anything other than paying $1,000 a month for water.
But maybe we want to, I don't know, do we want to turn it on a day or 2 before so it's nice and wet out there? So if they're coming on like a Wednesday, turn it on Monday?
Well, they're not going to be walking around it. All they're going to do is turn it on, take a meter reading, let it run for 5 or 10 minutes, take another meter reading, go to the next zone, take a meter reading after every zone, find out.
It's really easy
What the
to
water
do.
use
It's
is.
a couple hours. You can manually advance on the controller to the zone and let the zone run, walk over to the meter, write the meter number down, wait 5 minutes. take
Right.
another meter
That's what
reading.
we're trying to do.
It's really easy.
Yes.
I would suggest that it's as evident as Mike, you say that it is, and I don't have any doubt that it's not. Turn it on for a week, let it run, especially if we just got through seeding. It's going to set the seed. It's not going to hurt anything. We're going to run it for a week and not a month, and then call them out and say, here's your spot.
You guys can do whatever you want.
I can come turn it back on Cheryl this week if you want.
All I did was pull the plug, so it's easy to turn back on.
Plug it in.
But if the battery inside it is dead, there's a backup battery in there to keep all the settings in the clock.
Mm-hmm.
And if that battery hasn't been replaced for a while, when you unplug it, you'll lose all the settings.
I asked him if it would be a problem. He said it would not. So.
It won't be if the battery's good.
So we're going to turn it back on and then see if they'll come out. And if they don't see an obvious wet spot, can they please run the test?
I know the guy's going to be in the area on Thursday because I've got him coming out to Silver Creek subdivision to fix a bunch of leaks Silver Creek has.
Are you talking about Dwayne's company?
No, I'm talking about
Union?
Union Grove irrigation people.
Okay, well, they've already told me that there isn't. We've already paid money to them for them to tell us that there's not a leak.
Apparently we're confident there is, so maybe if we turn it back on. And if not, they come and there's nothing there, will they please test all the zones?
We want them to test it? Well, that would be another price.
Who was
If I swing out
Our
tomorrow
landscape.
and turn it back on, the guy's going to be in Silver Creek Thursday, I can ask him to just swing on over and look by the door again for a leak.
So we're going to turn the water on when?
I'll do it tomorrow.
So I'll try to come by Thursday afternoon too and look. And if it doesn't look bad, council can I go ahead and pay the $250 to have it checked by zone?
$100 makes sense compared to spending $1,000 a month for water.
Okay.
It does, but I don't think I'd authorize again to pay for another trip charge if they come out and say, there's a leak.
Well, we're talking about 2 different people, 2 different companies.
Okay, you're going to send your guy.
Who's outside?
He's the irrigation guy.
Okay.
I trust him before I trust the landscape
And
guy.
he's the one that already told me that there's not a leak. I have a
After he
invoice
came to
that
look
says
at the
there's no
system
leak.
that had been turned off for a very long period.
Okay.
He does other things to figure it. I can't exactly tell you what he does, but he did tests. He was here and did things for.
Yeah, he has a pressure gauge, so he pressurizes the system and then he looks for pressure drop. If there's no leak, the pressure stays when you turn the main on. And if there is a leak, the pressure goes up.
So he showed us there wasn't one.
That's what he told me. I don't know, I wasn't there, so yeah.
All right, so let's turn
We
it
got a
on.
plan. Turn it on
See.
tomorrow, ask him to swing by on Thursday after it's been on several days, and come and look for a wet spot where mine says,
It should be out.
So are you going to do both those things? You're going to turn it on and you're going to ask him to come here Thursday?
I will.
Okay.
If he shows up at Silver Creek.
Thank you, John. Next.
Okay, okay, we got our codification supplement done. That was almost $7,400, but there was a lot of supplements there. And we had the gate service done, J&G fence. It was $439. The only other thing I have to offer is American Rescue Plan. We do not have to do a report at the end of October. The Treasury Department has decided we can all wait until next April to report.
And when does your class start on that?
Wednesday.
And it runs how long?
3 weeks, 6 days.
From what time?
It's various times, but it's a good bit of 6 different days.
Okay.
They're still waiting for the final rulings.
Do you have any idea when that might come down?
No.
No.
They've been thinking for weeks it's going to be maybe next week.
Well, hopefully it will eventually be next week.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions for Cheryl? Anything else, Cheryl?
That's all I have.
All right, now on Parks and Rec.
So an action for Amanda. In reviewing the committee charter, we realised that several members of the committees terms have expired and we need to re-up those for reappointment. So Wayne Todd, Pat Utley are up to new terms as a regular member, and Pam King is up to a new term as an alternate. And Julie Brown is moving to the beach, so she's been serving on the committee since its inception, and she is resigned. Did you get confirmation from all directly, Cheryl?
I got confirmation from everyone except Julie.
Okay.
Did she resign in the meeting then?
Yes, she said she's not going to re-up, and she's moving to the beach, so...
All right, so then reappoint Wayne Todd and Pat Utley to new regular terms, Pam King to a new alternate term, and accept the resignation of Julie Brown and thank her for her many, many years of service on the Parks and Rec Committee.
Can we not move the alternate now into Julie's spot?
We'd have to ask Pam if she wants to do that first. But yeah, we could.
We've offered it before to Pam, and I can send her an email and ask her. Yeah.
All right, on the power rental policy, the last council meeting, there seemed to be a bit of confusion. I think it was mostly with Amy about what it was. We talked about, not really rental policy, but amending the rental policy for groups, not for profit groups. And I said I'd go back and clarify that with Amy. I did. We're still suggesting it be based on the decision whether to require them to have a temporary use permit or not is still based on whether it's a for-profit organisation, in which case they have to pay, follow the rental policy. And then the rest is for not-for-profit groups is based on the load on the parking lot. So small load on the parking lot, just go ahead and have your little event. As long as you're not making any money, medium-sized event, go ahead and have your event without doing the temporary use permit, but use the grass parking area. And a big event, sorry, you have to use the temporary use permit process and arrange parking and road crossing and all that stuff. So, did the amended text get sent to council?
Mhm.
Yeah, so you have the text. So the ask is that you guys sign off on it now. Do you want to do that now or do you want to move on?
Council?
I'll say let's go ahead and approve it now. I'll make a motion to approve the dog departmental policy as presented to us.
Second.
Any further discussion?
So the copy that I have is still a marked up copy. And there's, things in purple, things in red. So, I don't know what exactly what's all the colors mean? And what, if it's written here, is this what it is? That was the
So
question.
the red is new, and the purple is renumbered, I think.
No. Amy did it.
I think the red is new.
Would it help if you saw what we're looking at?
I don't know, the purples have been in there before, so I don't know what that was. That's new.
The red is new.
That red text is new. Yeah, that red text is the red text. That's the new stuff.
Okay.
So
So we
that.
don't know why the purple highlight is there.
I think
Well,
the
this
purple's
is a-
just renumbered.
Renumbered.
Oh, it's renumbering.
Okay.
Renumbered.
Okay.
That's purple's renumbering. The red is the new text.
And then the note at the bottom, revised and approved by PC.
That'll be revised, yeah.
Yeah, that's got to change.
Mhm.
Okay. No, I was just expecting a fully formal final copy, not a marked up copy for us to vote on. So thank you. I'm good.
All right, all in favor?
Thank you. All right. We have the flagpole dedication. Thanks for those of you that came out. Jim did a great job being the MC for the event. Good turnout. The Marine who proposed it was overwhelmed, tears in his eyes. Very happy with what we did.
It looks really good.
And it looks great.
Did any of the papers ever do a story?
No. We sent Deb. I don't know if Deb ever sent out a press release. Deb was from the communications committee. I sent her all the photographs I could get my hands on. Deb was going to do some kind of press release to the local media. I don't know if she did or not. I haven't seen it published in any newspaper yet.
I'll follow up with her.
If Deb can't write something, I'll put something together.
I sent her the troop number, the Marine's name, his former rank, all that stuff, photos of the event. So I think she has all the material necessary. The pond drain engineering support, we reviewed that. There are a lot of questions about, they haven't given us any cost estimates. They lay out what needs to be done, but at the time of the Parks and Rec meeting, hadn't given us any cost estimates. I followed up with the engineer. I said, dude, come on, give us some idea what, if it's designated low risk, what's it going to cost? If it's designated high risk, talked around and around, and basically the conclusion is, he said he can't give us any estimate because they need all that data to know what the dam's going to be classified as. So at Jim's suggestion, I went back and said, well, assume the worst case is designated high risk because you've indicated with all the changes that occurred That's where we're going to end up. What would it cost to remediate if it's high risk? I forwarded you guys emails on your shoulder. He came back and said, well, I don't have the data, so I can't tell you. So basically, Bonnie's team are saying, for us to get that data and take the next step towards being able to provide some estimates as to the remediation costs, we've got to spend that extra $13,000 on more engineering stuff.
So $13,000 to get a quote.
$13,000 to generate the data necessary to get the dam classified and get some feedback from DENA on what is going to be required to be done so that we can define that and then make some estimates as to what that's going to cost.
This is going to snowball.
I know, I'm dreading it.
Yep.
What's changed is the regulations around dams have changed. The impermeable surface in the 174-acre basin has changed. They didn't have the data in the past because it wasn't required when it was classified as a low hazard dam when we bought the property. And traffic has very likely changed on Leicester Davis Road. That would then kick us into a different classification. That did not exist at the time we purchased the property. And then on top of that, we got the deterioration of the infrastructure that drains the pond. That needs attention.
I just had flashbacks to when we looked at removing a tree stump from the pond, and the requirements just to remove the tree stump was 8 pages. Just to take out a tree stump.
Yeah.
So imagine with all the other work that has to
So
be done.
he's been pretty clear what we need to do, and that's just the define that is going to cost 18 grand. Yeah. It's not in our budget.
I also talked to Bonnie about it on Friday, and when we built the pond, when we built the park, we never did an investigation of the dam. So we really don't know how it's made or how substantial it is. There have been other dams that have failed, other town dams in other towns. And so they won't know until they do some more investigation how good or how bad it is and how much or how little work is necessary. So
Let me clarify one thing. When we purchased the property or when we built the park, that was not considered a high-risk dam at the time.
DENA, there was communication with DENA, and DENA sent us a letter saying it's not a high hazard dam, it's a low hazard dam. They designated it as such.
And that was back in 2012?
it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And since then, the dam regulations have changed, the population has changed, the traffic has changed, the impermeable surface in the basin has changed, a lot of stuff has changed. So Bonnie's team are saying you can't move forward without doing this.
But DENA will not tell us anything without having
Without all that data.
information from Bonnie.
The one note that concerned me in one of the more recent emails is as soon as you give them all this data, you're going to have to have an emergency action plan together in 90 days from the date they designate it as high hazard. So there are going to be consequences to doing this.
I just wanted to ask a clarification, because I'm not an engineer, but is fixing it different? So if it's low hazard versus high hazard, does that mean it has to be fixed differently? Or how does it, what I'm still confused on is how the classification actually affects the repair cost. You have to fix it better if it's higher than lower? I don't. Or is it just fix it?
That was my understanding. If it's designated as a high-risk dam, there's more work.
There's more fixed. You have to fix it better.
Yeah, the dam was originally built in 1972, finished in 73, but the regulations were a little vague in 72. So if we upgrade, it's kind of like doing a remodel of your house. If you remodel your bathroom at your house, you have to bring everything up to code
Right.
to today's standard. Doesn't matter if the house was built in the 70s.
And that code, and that, so that fix would be different depending on how the dam was classified.
I believe that's my interpretation. Like when we had it classified last time, somebody from the state EPA came, the Army Corps of Engineers, and DENA came. And I remember meeting with them on the dam. They just walked up and down the dam and said, yeah, it looks good. We got a letter.
Then they sent us a check. They sent us a bill, we had to send them a check.
Now apparently they don't just do that, they want all this engineering data.
They're looking for upstream, they're looking for downstream, they're looking for the construction of the physical dam itself, the age of the dam, the holes in the dam, tree stump in the dam, all that stuff.
And I would assume the other part of being a high risk or high hazard, whichever the classification is, would bring with it some level of ongoing monitoring or inspection.
Well, we're not 100% sure it's going to be labeled as high risk, right?
I think with just looking at the traffic number on Leicester Davis Road, I think we're already in that number. Vaughan, the question I have for you is, do we have any historical traffic data for Leicester Davis? He said, because if we had that and we knew for sure it was above the limit, we can save the cost of doing a traffic study.
I've checked with everybody. No, we don't have that. I checked with Vaughn, I checked with
We're gonna have
DOT.
to do a traffic study.
Is that part of the 13,000?
It is.
It's part of it, yeah.
So color the picture for me, John. Let's go all the way back. If we look at both ends of the spectrum, we pay $13,000, which is the beginning, to find out how much it's going to cost us beyond that to get it repaired. On the other end of the spectrum, at this point, can we do nothing? I mean, is that a...
I asked that question, and Danny, the engineer, said I definitely would not recommend that.
Because
Potential failure of the dam. I asked him to put that, can you define for us what the risks are? I did ask him that question, and he hasn't yet done that. I wanted him to go in print saying, if you don't do it, this is going to happen, that could happen, this could happen, and he hasn't responded to that request. I don't think he can until he gets some of the engineering data.
It's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better.
What we know is occurring, so there's a downpipe, we know there's holes in that, and if this is supposed to be the level of the water's coming in below the water level, some of it's being stopped by all the silt that's built up around the pipe. Of more concern is the pipe that goes through the dam. That is corroded, and now we can see there's water flowing down the sides. So he's already reported that, and it's starting to wash dirt out from around the pipe. So that's the catastrophic failure risk. Is if that continues unabated, at some point the whole dam just going to go. That's the risk.
It's a 50-year-old dam, and if we do repairs, it'll probably last for 50 years.
Do we have $13,000?
Where is that number? I'm trying to find it in the...
In his last quote, the last email to me, not the last email, the one before it, he said it's...
Is it in this-
13,800 or something, I don't remember exact number, but he did give us a number for the next phase.
We don't have it budgeted. We would have to
We
budget it.
don't have it budgeted. I would not like to
Can't
take
find a
away
number.
from everything else, so if you could move it from contingency, if you decide to go this route, that would be preferred.
Wasn't there a fund balance for the park?
We have plenty in that fund balance, yeah. John, I just can't find the number, though. Was it in an email? I have the 50-page report, but
No, it wasn't.
I got it here, Cheryl.
So,
is
Jim's
it
got it.
in a... Was it in an email?
No, it's actually the last page of their proposal.
With this thing?
Yeah, this whole table.
How much is it, Jim?
13,000. It's not like an engineered number. $13,977.50. Got to get under $14,000.
Right, so it's closer to 4.
It's called $14,000.
And capacity of the dam, what the downstream impact would be just from where it fell. But there would be a lot of liability on us because we now know there's a risk.
And downstream from it is Hollister. So if all the water past Lester Davis, so I guess the worst scenario is there's a car driving across Lester Davis when all that water comes and the car gets. You got it. Most of the houses on the other side of Lester Road are higher than the dam, so I don't think they're at risk, but possibly the real estate downstream in Hollister is at risk.
And I do think once you start asking a question and asking for a classification, that proves you know something.
Yeah.
Or we've heard enough information, so we cannot act like we never heard this and be surprised there's a problem.
Sorry, this all came about because of the proposal to put a liner in it, which I didn't think was a good idea, and Bonnie's team agree that's not the thing to do.
Well, and the reality is, this really has nothing to do with the dam itself that we're in this situation. It's the actually all the growth that's happened around it, to where now it's put us in a situation that what could have previously been handled as low risk can't anymore just because of all the growth in the area.
Yep.
That we have no control over.
Right.
For the most part.
And then this is really like number 14, but could we go ahead and vote on this?
You can.
So like I could go ahead and make a motion that we reappropriate,
That you appropriate it, and the quote, I found it, it's no more than $13,980. So $13,980 from appropriate fund balance for future park improvements.
fund out for future park improvements.
But before you do that, I think it's really important that you four define what it is you need to know to make a decision to fix. Because at some point you got to put this out the bid, right? To fix it. So before you do that, what do you need to know to make that decision? Because I'm not convinced that this 14,000 is going to get you that.
Well, I trust Bonnie, I trust our engineer.
Well,
She can
no,
get
it's not a question of trust. It's a question of, as you said, what data we need, more data. But at some point, you're going to have to make a decision to put this out the bid. So, and before you approve $13,000, it would be useful to know that that it's actually going to cost $25,000 to reach the point where you can put it out the bid. I'm just throwing out a number. Otherwise, it's just, we'll be right back here when this is done. We'll be right back here asking you for another X thousand dollars to get us another step down the road, which still isn't the step to put it out in the bid. So that if the goal is to fix the dam,
Not right yet, the goal is to figure
the goal is
out.
to fix the dam. What do you need to know in order to make a decision to move forward with getting a bid? What do you need to know?
Cost.
You want to know what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and what John said earlier, you need to know what the risk, quantify the risk of waiting. And I'm not.
My interpretation from what is written in the conversation with Danny is that we can't get to the point where we can get a number on what it's going to cost to fix the dam yet.
Until we spend this money.
Until we spend that.
And just this money. That's really my question here. Does this get us there?
Yeah. This is the beginning of the snowball. It's the pebble at the top of the hill that's eventually going to snowball into something the size of my car.
This gets us the data to help us get a classification. And classification, low versus high, will then lead us to an estimate for repair. So high risk, one price, low risk, a different price.
And do we know that if we spend $14,000?
That's my understanding, yes.
That's my understanding. I don't know for sure.
That would be great. I just want to make sure.
A second set of eyes, I think, is always good, or is in this case. I suggest you give Danny a call.
Okay.
You feel him out in a different way than I felt him out.
Well, when we call our vendor, that costs us money, and we've never had committees talk to the engineers or citizens. Yeah.
So there's a motion on the floor. It has to have a second, really. Did
Oh.
you
I thought you seconded it because we went to discussion.
No.
No.
But I'll second it so that we can get to that point.
Okay, thank you, That, yeah, like Lori said, we have to know what kind of name it is to move forward.
And then I think it comes down to, at that point, and they come back and tell us it's gonna be $100,000, it's like you said, $100,000 to repair, or can we drain the pond and eliminate the pond? And what's that cost? I think that's the two options we're gonna end up with.
Yeah.
But we don't know either one. So, and it's unfortunate that we don't have the data, but things change, requirements change. And we just have to deal with what's in front of us, unfortunately, without a lot of warning.
And we're right, John, depending upon the classification of high risk and low risk, we may have access to funds outside of most of the chapters.
Danny indicated if it is classified as a high risk dam, there may be grant money available. What those grants are, I don't know yet. I mean, I'm waiting until we've got a number on how much money we've got to come up with before I go start looking for money.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Thank you, Council. Two more things I'll just mention to move it along. Some of the others were so minor, I wanted to mention them. One was the potential bathroom picnic solar storage room project. We discussed that. You know we've got a quote from an architect wanting $26,600 just to do the construction document. I believe, and I think several people concur, there may be an opportunity to reduce that kind of cost if we go to a design and build kind of contract. We're also of the belief that perhaps the American Rescue Funds can be used to do that. Water and sewer infrastructure part of that project. So we decided we perhaps should go ahead and start developing a specification for that, so that once it's clarified for sure that American Rescue Funds can be used to cover some of that cost, we'll be ready to go with it, because we've only got that, I think it's a 2-year window to spend the money, and we know how long things take with council. So we're going to get on it and start developing a specification for that.
Even if it bears no fruit at all.
Even if it bears no fruit at all. We'll go through them and get everything ready. Not quite shovel ready, but as close as we can get to that as possible. So that if it's determined the funds are available to use for that, we can do it. And if not, we'll just go in a file until council's ready to build the restroom using the village's own funds.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay. The last thing I want to talk about, Cheryl had asked that we discuss a gate code policy. As we discussed, the guy was out to fix the gate with some vandalism on the keypad. Apparently codes were changed, so we were asked to discuss who should have the codes. Brad proposed that Cheryl, Parks and Rec Chair, any employee, park employee, and council liaison to the Parks and Rec Committee have the codes. The majority voted in favour of that, so that's the committee's recommendation to council.
And to clarify, there's more than one code to the gate. There's a maintenance code for like police, the trash company, the porta pot company, the landscaper, the gate repair company. There's also a master code which is used to program, and then there's also what's called a hold open code. And what that does is that code overrides the photo sensor, so when we have events either early in the morning or late at night, the gate stays open, and all those codes were deleted.
It's because of the damage and repair.
I think they put a new control panel in, and the chip behind the control panel contains those codes.
Have you been to the park lately?
Have I been to the park lately? Not in a couple of weeks.
I was there yesterday, and the gate's just beeping.
Beeping?
Bad, just beeping. Beep, 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 beep.
shouldn't do that.
No.
I'm going to text you, I just forgot, so right now.
Well, first question I have is, when I called Jamie Fencing and asked them specifically about the codes, they said that the master code was changed, which we didn't request, and that all the other codes were deleted, which we didn't request. So
And
I asked,
John just explained that.
no, it wasn't a factor. I said, so why did all these codes get deleted? And they said, because Cheryl asked us to delete them.
Now, wait a minute.
Is that not,
That is not the case.
that is not the case, okay.
John just said they replaced the control unit and it deleted everything.
Right, but they were supposed to put all the codes back.
They asked me what code we wanted, and I asked John about the EMS code. I wasn't aware of these other codes. No one ever told me
I
about them.
wasn't aware of the other codes either.
Yeah, all we knew there was a master code and there was a
I knew
emergency
there was a
service.
code, and only Cheryl and the gate company had that. I knew there was an emergency code, and I didn't have that. And then there was a general code just to open the gate when somebody needed to.
So based on what I heard you say, you had a recommended list to have the codes, but I think that needs to be different lists for each code. Because it doesn't seem like that many people need the master code.
Correct. I think only Cheryl needs a master code. That's it.
That, yeah, that's very limited. And then the override code for events and things, maybe that's a different group than you might have for one of the other codes. But I think we need to fully understand each one of the codes and make appropriate decisions for that.
So the master code.
Cover the need.
Right. The master code enables a person with the master code to change all the other codes in the keypad. So I don't think everybody should have that one. I think it should be very limited distribution to that one in case the codes ever need to be changed.
She'll write a piece of paper and puts it in the safe, so to speak. So, yeah.
The emergency code, I think, should only be EMT, fire department, routine maintenance people, a landscaper. And basically, that's it. And then I
The
think
emergency code is what Mike referred to as the maintenance code. That's the same.
Well, there's the police, fire, and EMS, and then there's one for the porta pot guys, the trash guys, the landscapers, and the gate repair company as well.
I mean, they all use the same code, or each one of them has a code?
You
I'm sorry.
can do it anyway.
Why would they need a code? Wouldn't they come when the park was open?
Not always.
I haven't given the code to them. I know Brandon has the code and fire has the code.
Then the hold open code is specifically something we use for events, when we're having evening events or morning events. We've had 5Ks there that start before, well, we have to get there before the sun comes up. And then there's been events where we have music at night, and we have to be looking for that. So there's a
I
whole
think that's a
other
larger group committee members or something for events and things like that. Whereas the emergency code, the maintenance code, I understand and thinking about maintenance should normally be during the day, but as I observed tonight at 7 o'clock, it was getting pretty dark and daylight savings time ends in 2 weeks. And so, the workday's still going in the dark for some of these crews. So,
we're starting, it's that time of year where we've already started to get complaints about the gate not opening early enough. Because the sun just isn't coming up high enough to trigger the photo sensor. And there was a complaint on Facebook, and then somebody said, well, why don't you just shine your phone flashlight on the photo sensor and the gate will open? I was like, why do you tell people that stuff?
So can we make a list of all the codes, even and who's supposed to have them?
So we had one.
Can we take,
Cheryl John just said they didn't know about any of it.
I didn't know about a hold open code
But all the
or a
rest of the codes.
separate maintenance code.
I didn't even.
I thought there was a master code, an emergency code, and then a general code.
Right. The only one you didn't know about was the hold open code.
Right.
What's a general code?
The one the maintenance guys used, the one I used to have so I could go and open the gate if it was closed early in the morning or late at night if I needed to get in.
Why do we have all these different codes if it's all codes for different people to open the gate?
You can group them any way you want, Cheryl.
I'm just,
I think it kind of comes down to like you have a big group of maintenance people, you want to change who they are, you might want to change a code. But the other thing I would say is if the opening of the gate, because of the time of day issue with the sunrise and people are like, oh, I can use my flashlight. Once we get a parking employee, that might be something that we say, guess what? Every month we can go manually change it where it's not by the sun anymore. It's a set time, open, close for a set time.
We used to do that.
Yeah, I think
So
so.
we would have an employee now that could manage that.
It's problematic.
There's nothing in life that's not problematic, Michael. We just have to pick the best option.
Putting in the photo sensor and having it open and close from sunrise to sunset was the best compared to what we had before, which was based on a timer. And we would have to adjust it about every month for
That's what I
the,
just said. We monthly go change the timer to reflect the length of the day.
It gets a little confusing for citizens. We used to do that, and
Well, I think that's the only way you can accommodate the people who are the early risers.
no matter what you do, you can't
all we
accommodate.
do is put up a sign that says park is open from sunrise to sunset.
People's interpretation of sunrise and the gate opening is not a constant. Some people think the minute dawn starts appearing, that sunrise and the gate should be open, and it isn't.
We've spent 3 times as much time talking about a gate code as we have $13,000, $14,000 in expenditures.
Yeah.
What can we do to bring some closure to this? Does it need to go back to Parks and Rec?
I
Or
just
the
want
rec
to listen
station?
to the
Or-
codes. I want to listen to the codes and who we just said can have them.
Okay. So does that need to go back to Parks and Rec? Or
I think John can.
I think you have it.
Okay.
Cheryl is the only one with master code.
Yeah.
The EMT, fire, and police are the only one with the emergency code. And then the recommendation for the general code, which is everybody else, I guess, is the recommendation was Cheryl, the Parks and Rec chair, any park employee, and the Parks and Rec liaison from council.
And I'll make a motion to accept that as presented by John.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you, John.
Sorry, folks.
No, you're fine, thank you. We do have 2 applications for a Parks and Rec employee. I've not had a chance to review the second application.
I'm sorry, going back up for a second. Cheryl, does that mean you're going to go over with the master code and program all these other codes?
I can't program him. I'll have to call him, and we'll have to pay him to come back out and put in these codes.
That's,
It's a shame no one ever told us about all these codes.
And what if they erase the codes, though?
Well, they asked us what codes we want, and John and I told them. We didn't know about all these codes.
But that code that they put in is not the master code?
well, the funny thing about it is
I have the master code. I can ask him if he can give me instructions on how to go out with the master
I
code.
mean, we don't need to have him come out and charge us, and what did he charge us last time? $439 to come in and program 2 or 3 additional codes.
Well, no, he was also replacing
You keep
equipment. Yeah.
Well, right, but we're not going to pay him again to come out just to program some numbers in there. I mean, he sent me the procedure, and I asked him for the code, and he said, I can't give it to you. Only Cheryl can.
I'll call them, and I've always worked very well with them, and I'm sure they'll let me figure out how to do it.
But none of this would have been a problem if he had, if Tim Powers had come out and he sent out his underling, who didn't do what Tim normally does.
Okay, so that brings us to a public hearing on text amendment PA 2104 regarding changes to the temporary sign regulations in sections 156.163 of the zoning ordinance. Is anyone signed up to speak? So I need to open a public hearing. Bond? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This text amendment was developed in response to some complaints about signs, particularly temporary signs that folks have been seeing, and particularly on weekends. And so back in 2019, there were a number of changes made to your sign ordinance. I think overall, pretty good job was done with that. But with regard to the temporary signs, there's probably a little bit left to be desired there in terms of how it was specified that it would be regulated. And so I wrote an amendment to clarify the current provisions and have a more reasonable standard for the length and frequency of display of temporary signs as currently allowed. one of the things with the current way the ordinance regulates temporary signs is that it asserts that there's like a year for a pole or post mounted sign, a 35 square foot fine, one per business or parcel. The notes just say it's good for 1 year, renewable for 1 year, and which seems it's kind of vague as to can you then come back a day after the 1 year and do another year. So somebody could ostensibly have a 35 square foot sign in front of their business, a temporary sign of that size. It's not really clear as to how things like a sign in somebody's yard might be regulated. And so we wanted to propose some new language to bring it more in line with ordinances that at least I'm more familiar with in terms of how temporary signs are regulated. Temporary signs are kind of interesting to deal with these days. There's some now 7-year-old, I guess, Supreme Court case that kind of messed with how temporary signs were previously regulated. They used to be done by function, real estate signs and signs for this and signs for that, and you really can't judge by content anymore. And so the new regulations would allow for the display of up to 3 8 square foot signs, no taller than 6 feet tall, basically on any parcel for an unlimited amount of time. And we ask, well, why does anybody need to do that? It seems like an excessive number of signs. A, they're already doing it. B, real estate signs exist, and trying to police that in any kind of real way is probably not a winning proposition in terms of real estate signs on your property, you selling your house on the corner. We also wanted to make sure we have a provision for temporary signs for a business would use, and so we do have provisions for larger ones to be displayed up to 30 days, not for 1 year, up to 4 times per year. If you have your own business on its own parcel, you can go stick one out there. You have to get a permit for it. If you have a tenant space in a multi-tenant shopping center, for instance, then you could display a banner for 30 days on your tenant space. Up to 24 square foot sign, which is fairly typical 3x8 or 4x6 type banner sign. We've reinforced that temporary signs are proven to be placed in the right of way. I think Amy's already enforcing that to a certain extent. There's nothing anybody's going to be able to do about folks that go out there on Friday and stick out signs in the road and come back on Sunday evening and pick them up. That's just, we can yell, scream all we want to, but I don't think they're going to go away. We also excuse from regulation any kind of temporary freestanding sign that meets the size standard in A, which is the 8 square foot sign, if it's set back more than 100 feet from a public right of way. So if it's something in the interior of a shopping center, somebody sticks a sign out, yes.
Well, you said there's nothing we can do about the people who put out signs Friday afternoon or Friday evening and pick them up Sunday. Why isn't there anything we can do about that? Because
we can. Practically, there's not. I mean, you're going to be dealing with 18 different home builders, and you send them a letter, and we can do whatever. It's just probably not going to have. This is more for the types of nuisance signage. A, we provide reasonable regulation of it. If somebody puts on, in front of their house a 50 square foot sign, then we'll go take care of it. The developer at Pinnacle, if they put out 14 signs, well, we don't say you can have 14 signs. We say you can have 3, and you can have this larger one for 30 days.
Well, my question is more related to the signs that you find on the corner out here that are directing you to subdivisions or homes for sale or things like that, where they put 12 of them on the corner, and they're all usually from the same developer or a couple of developers.
If somebody's out here on a Friday and wants to take a picture of them and let us know, then we'll send a letter. Every time they pick them back up, though, they have cured the violation. And they have 30 days to appeal the letter we sent to them. So
And we have sent letters, and the county informally, is my understanding, the county informally has told them they don't care as long as they're gone.
Well, in the county, that's fine, but in Wesley Chapel, we should care.
Sure, if you want to pay somebody to go pick them up on the weekends, then that's one way to keep that from happening.
Well, it seems to be repeat offenders, the same developers,
Sure.
the same builders,
Yep.
doing it over and
So
over.
they create the violation, they cure the violation. They create the violation, they cure the violation.
And originally, when I started here, I thought that was because that was what the ordinance said. You could put them out Friday after 5, but you had to pick them up before Sunday. It's just, that's the only way they could not get caught.
Right. There's no provision, all public streets or NCDOT streets, there is no provision for the establishment of signage except under very limited circumstances, private signage within an NCDOT right-of-way. There is no provision for it
I
whatsoever.
believe there's a service that posts and collects those signs, because I've seen
Oh, yeah.
a truck with 20 different subdivisions jump out of this truck, stick all the signs out, and pick them all up.
And going beyond that, we used to, until December 31st, I think, our friends in the legislature have also been very helpful this year on part of their overall law enforcement police reform. They essentially decriminalize everything having to do with land use, any kind of violation of land use. So after December 31st, it's no longer a misdemeanor to violate a land use development ordinance. And so even that kind of, you're a repeat criminal violator of this ordinance, that doesn't even exist, won't exist in very short order. So our sticks are getting much smaller.
I'm not expecting the county to do much about sign issue, but I think in the confines of Wesley Chapel, we should at least be taking these repeat offenders and saying, look, I understand what you want to do over in Mineral Springs or down in unincorporated Union County, but in this area where we live, we don't want this. And, send them a letter. And if sending them a letter doesn't work,
We have. Cheryl and Amy sent some letters a couple months ago, I believe.
Amy sent them.
Amy sent some letters a couple months ago. I don't know. I have no clue about the extent of the issue. I know what I assume because I see it everywhere. But
And we are a complaint based.
and we
So
have that in place.
if you see the signs, take a picture, email them to Amy or Cheryl, and we'll get letters sent out. Like Vaughn said, violation, cure violation, violation, cure violation.
And the penalty for the repeat offender.
until NCDOT, which they never will, decides that they don't want it, then there's not much. If it was municipal right of way, there'd be a little bit more probably that we could do, but technically it's not even our problem.
So we're allowed to have standards that are higher than the county's.
Oh, the county has nothing to do with what's going on.
The county doesn't care.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want to in unincorporated areas, but we have our own. We say no signs in the right of way, and NCDOT says no signs in the right of way. And if they're going to mow, they'll do something about it. Otherwise,
Okay.
so again, these are some just to cure the issue that we saw, related to some very specific things having to do with some developers doing on-site. They're doing signage on-site. They're just putting out 20 signs along on their property. I think in most cases, this is a way to make sure that we have something that's reasonable that we can point to enforce to them. Give them the ability to do it on a reasonable basis, on the same kind of basis as other businesses within the village. And also make sure that the regulation for homeowners on a residential property is clear as to what is permitted.
So, no one's here to speak. So I can close the public hearing. All right. So that brings us to considering approval of ordinance 2021-17, admitting, TA 2103 permitted uses of
Sure.
Item 9.
There's too many of them. Consider approval of 2021-16, amending temporary sign regulations in section 156.163 of the zoning ordinance.
Need a second on that?
We're gonna make, so I make a motion that we approve it with the, can I put the statement of consistency in there?
Yes.
With the statement of consistency that it's consistent with policy number 5 under goal 3 of the land use plan. Goal 3 being to encourage that new non-residential development be attractively designed, pedestrian friendly and in harmony with the surrounding development. Policy 5, ground mounted signs limited in size but sufficiently large for visibility shall be required for non-residential development.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Alright. So now we are going to, I'm going to open the public hearing on text amendment TA 29-03 to permitted uses in the RA40 zoning district in section 156.60 of the zoning ordinance.
This was reviewed by the village council previously, and the village council made some recommendations and sent those recommendations to the planning board for them to review, and the planning board reviewed them at the last meeting and made some changes to what the village council had originally proposed, and that is what you have in front of you this evening. The planning board looked very thoroughly at what you sent and made some changes to send back to you based on their assessment of it. And don't have a whole lot to say about it. I think we've probably been through these a few times. But
Did we officially send it back to,
You did.
send it back to planning board?
You did.
So we spent all that time going through it just for them to go through and undo some of the things and stuff.
You had there since the village council proposed something that was more expansive in terms of its scope than what the planning board had recommended. The planning board had to review it again prior to you making a decision on it.
So the best I can tell is we had removed churches and nonprofit clubs. And we removed nonprofit clubs specifically because of that congregation ability that we had a long conversation about. And so we had totally deleted those, but they put them back in as a special use.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
And then it looks like we had Country Club was in there, and then they deleted that one.
Right.
Right?
That's correct.
Is that all the changes that I catch along?
I believe that's it. And you can follow their recommendation or not.
Well, they moved, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, they moved, I just pulled up planning board minutes. They moved church, daycare associated with church, and nonprofit club to special use.
Right. Yeah.
And it's nonprofit club. And we had deleted, where did daycare come from? Oh, okay, so we had,
You had proposed to remove those from the as being permitted in any way, shape, or form.
okay.
Is anybody signed up to speak? Now? So I can close the public hearing. And now we can discuss it and consider approval. Council?
I have the same objections I had last meeting to church, the daycare center associated with the church and the nonprofit club, based on the discussions we had in September.
I'm okay with keeping, I mean, they took Country Club out. I'm okay with keeping Country Club out. But I would still like to receive church, daycare associated with the church. And nonprofit club. We left bed and breakfast in. We've talked about it.
We suggest special use permit, agribusiness, agritourism, animal hospital, indoor, outdoor, animal kennel, animal shelter, animals, livestock, bed, breakfast, pet club, rubber and sauna, and manufactured homes. According to the
No issues.
David?
Witness to the table of uses.
Sure.
There was something else I thought that we had taken out.
You had recommended removing the church, community center, governmental uses.
And then remove community center.
Okay.
So, I would like to propose that we, remove church, daycare, and nonprofit club from uses permitted, along with community center, country club, golf course, driving range, golf course, miniature, government uses, village owned and operated, library, microbrewery, school for the arts, school, sports, and instructional. That is a motion to remove those from permitted uses in the RA 40 district.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, so all in favor? Okay. And I guess we need to make a motion to approve the following.
I would make a motion to approve the proposed uses as just amended by that motion.
As special use permit.
Yeah.
So much. So I'd like to make a motion that the uses just discussed will be allowed with a special use permit in the RA 40 district.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Continue public hearing on
But we
RV.
need to adopt the consistency statement and adopt the.
Well, you were just adopting the special use, but what about removing uses?
Right. So they made a first motion to remove some uses from that,
Oh, okay.
then a motion to make the others that the list without those the special uses. I think there's probably an entire motion that to
Approve the ordinance.
adopt the text amendment as amended, and then adopt the statement of consistency is policy 2, goal 2, and I'll just refresh your memory on that one real quick, and that is commercial development beyond the village's commercial, governmental, and institutional hub will only be allowed in areas designated on the land use plan map. Commercial development will be limited to low-density, small-scale retail, which provides neighborhood services, rural cottage industries, and/or small-scale recreational opportunities. That is policy 2, goal 2, as recommended by the planning board as a statement of consistency.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the table of uses, or approve
The ordinance.
The ordinance.
district
Ordinance.
as amended.
Right.
Because it is consistent with the adopted land use plan, because it supports policy 2, goal 2 of the plan, which seeks to limit commercial development outside of areas designated for such use in the future land use map.
Second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All of us, or is that me? So that brings us to a continued public hearing on RG 21-01, request to rezone 21 acres at Alpine Parker Road from R40 to RA 40. So I'll reopen that public hearing.
I probably don't have anything else to say about this one, other than just to recount to the village council the decision on this had been delayed until such time as a conclusion had been come to on the uses permitted in the RA 40 district. And so those uses, that as amended, that is now what the ordinance effectively states. And so any rezoning of any property or the current zoning of any property at the RA40 district would be subject to the recently amended table of permitted uses regarding what's used as a use by right or a special use permit or not permitted within that district.
So the current request to rezone would fall under these
Yes.
criteria.
Right.
So we could, so will he have to reapply first? Will he have to apply for a special use permit? How will it, or
For
we
what?
can approve it right now?
For what?
I don't know. He has to say.
The only thing you're considering is the zoning of the property is RA40. You're not considering
Oh, okay.
any specific use of the property.
My only question was, I'm assuming, John, that you still want to pursue this, even with these changes. That you're not looking to withdraw your request.
Thank you so much for asking. Yes, I did.
Well, I'd like to make a motion, oh, wait, we got to close. Do you want to say anything else? So I'm going to close the public hearing. Then I'd like to make a motion that we rezone 21.8 acres at 513 Jim Parker Road from R40 to RA40. Any further discussion? All in favor?
And the statement of consistency. Yeah. So you need to adopt a statement of consistency and a statement of reasonableness on that. And the statement of consistency, it is consistent with the adopted future land use map. The future land use map designates the area as low density residential. The RA40 district does permit low density residential development, and I would say that the zoning is not unreasonable given the nature of the current use of the property.
Okay. I motion exactly what Mark was saying. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. So we're done with that one, right? No more votes. So we've already done the Dogwood Park Pond Spillway investigation, Cottonwood Lane code enforcement, but since we still have some people here with us, let's move that down to right either before or after council comments, and let Bond give the update on the comprehensive plan steering committee.
So we held our third comprehensive plan steering committee late last month. I don't even know what month it is anymore. And, immediately prior to the planning board meeting, so it was a very long day. But at that last comprehensive plan steering committee meeting, we reviewed a booklet of maps that we had prepared, everything from land use patterns, infrastructure, development, population and housing patterns, school and fire districts, environmental features, etc. Reviewed that with the committee, had a lot of great questions, led us to examine some of the data that we had gathered from the county a little bit more closely. We have been working with the school board. We got additional data from the school board that clarifies those things. The information on the county's GIS website is not correct, but they did provide us with the accurate information. One of the things we would not have known if we didn't have this great committee to work with. Also, the fire districts, we've been in touch with the fire marshal, the assistant county manager. We almost started a small war, I think, maybe. Calamity was avoided, though. The fire marshal was very sensitive, maybe, to questions about fire districts. But I think we got everything cleared up with that. Hopefully, we're on our way to doing that. Bridge has updated the maps based on some of the recommendations and some of the insight we received from the steering committee. The other big to-do that we had was on the 29th and 30th of September, we held our community conversations. We had 52-ish people signed up to come speak to us. We did it all day on that Wednesday and Thursday, the last week of September. We had really good conversations with everybody that did show up, a very wide variety of people. Heard a lot of the same things from people, heard some unique perspectives. I think we had 1, 2, 3, we had several people in this room come in and speak to us. It was really great to get to learn more about Wesley Chapel. And so it really helped us expand our knowledge of the community and understand better what everybody's thinking. We're going to be presenting the results of that and kind of a summary of that to the steering committee at our next meeting. And we're on track. The Census Bureau is still on track, hopefully, to get us the data from the 2020 census by December or so. That'll be the next kind of big bit of information that we are providing to the steering committee. We won't be able to share that with you till January, since we won't be having a planning board meeting. I think we probably won't have a steering committee meeting in December, since it'll be close to Christmas when we do that. We'll need a little time to digest everything. So we'll meet this month and probably next month as well to kind of finalize some plans for moving into the new year and start discussing some of the policy development phases of this. But everything's going great. It's been fun working with everybody.
I'm just curious, what kind of error do we find in the GIS data?
The data that's on the county's website for the school districts is not accurate. Yeah.
That's interesting. What other data? I wonder now if they have wrong.
The school board, on their website, they have accurate PDF maps of the districts, but they have not, for some reason, shared that with the general county GIS folks to share on their website. And so we had some inaccurate data that our intrepid steering committee members were able to point out that didn't look quite right. And we said, well, we got it from the county.
Good job. We've passed on along. Good job. I mean, it's just great to hear the involvement level and stuff.
Yeah, it was everybody, groups of generally 2, 3, 4 folks spent about an hour with us talking. So we spent 8 hours, a little bit more, 9 hours each day doing it. It was good.
Thank you for your hard work on that.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right, so that brings us to, I'll go ahead and skip on to the Western Union Municipal Alliance update. We hosted the September meeting. We did have a Weddington deputy come to talk to us about scams that they have encountered in the area, getting usually older people to agree to mail money or log into your bank and steal your information. And so I think we did send out some information that they gave us about the National Elder Fraud Hotline. If you can remember.
That info's back there too. Mm-hmm. And it's on our website.
And Weddington is moving forward with active waste as their one garbage company or recycling company. Stallings is in the middle of a big lawsuit about a property they did not approve. They're going to do Stallings Fest in mid-October, and they are trying to buy some parcels to expand their downtown area. Everybody's very anxious still about the American Rescue Funds. Marvin does seem to want to spend a lot of theirs on technology. And then everyone is excited, I guess is the word, about the upcoming election. I think many towns, more so other towns than us, could really see a really big change in the makeup of their councils and leadership. So I think there's a lot of anxiety out there. But that was it. That was a nice meeting. We'll be meeting again in October. Anything to add, Mr. Post?
So Marvin's spending, they think they'll spend our funds on technology?
They think they would spend it on like Zoom technology and TVs and computers and stuff like that. That's what
Which town was that?
Marvin. But no one else was. Everybody was still hoping that there'll be some sort of partnership with the county, like we give you this if you help us with this. But no one has clear answer yet. So.
Anybody in favor of paying for water and sewer upgrades with the county?
Yeah. In the past we have, and no one has signed an agreement or been excited about signing an agreement.
Fair enough.
if we do, but that's not our responsibility. Or headache. Do y'all want to do council comments while there's still people in the room? Who wants to go first?
David looks like he wants to get started.
One observation and then two requests possibly for future council meetings. One observation is, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the deputy report for this month,
Yeah.
but other than passive events such as business checks and preventative patrol, the next highest occurrence is service of civil paper. I don't want to nitpick Brandon and what he does, but I also I want to make sure that Wesley Chapel gets their money's worth for what we're paying with our deputy. And if there's any of these service of civil paper, service of criminal summons, service of eviction notice, service of warrants, if there's any of those that can fall back to the deputy's office and allow Brandon to spend more time patrolling Wesley Chapel, I'd be in favor of that. And then two recommendations. There continues to be a lot of talk that I hear about roads, and we all know there's nothing that we can do for roads. But I think it would be a good use of time, Lori, and it's putting the burden on you, with you being the CRTPO rep, for all of us to have maybe an update per month, sort of know where we're at with a lot of these issues. It may not change at all, Lori, but just to know that we're addressing those and we're bringing the council up to date. And then the second thing, Friday night, I went to see the James Bond movie. Awesome movie. Incredible. And in the middle of the movie, I started getting text. And it was due to an email that had been sent out. And it made me question an email that had been sent out, I'm assuming, by the village, but it regarded vaccinations. And I had so many questions about that. I'm not opposed to the email. I'm not opposed to vaccines. But I think we do need to make sure with our communications that we've got a clear line of authority as to what goes out, and also we know what's going out. I know we lean on Cheryl to send out some stuff. We lean on Amanda to send out some stuff. We lean on the communications committee to send out some stuff. I think maybe in the next, over the next several council meetings, we need to really define who's in charge of sending out this communication. And council being aware of what communications are going out.
Was that all for anything? No question?
No quote. James Bond was good though.
You can come back to David if you want to.
August 2nd. I think, if it's my understanding, and oh my gosh, it's been presented to us so many times, I should understand, that Brennan's report is any deputy coming to Wesley Chapel. So those civil, whatever, could be another deputy.
Yeah.
I think in the past we have asked for his specific work. And we might do that again for a while, if you would like, David. Just compare what he does versus what other deputies do.
Amanda, I don't think you're correct in that. I think his report is his report, not necessarily the entire county or the entire Wesley Chapel. It's just what he's doing for us. And we looked at this several times in the past.
It's 467 calls. I don't think he could do all that.
And the last month, he made a comment about there was a data element in there that he didn't understand why it was classified as a chapel. So,
But I can make sure, we can make sure. I know he's presented it to us enough, I should remember exactly what it is,
I
but.
think what Amanda said was right. It's everything in Wesley Chapel, every deputy.
Okay.
So,
And I retract what I said.
so I will confirm that, and then if this is total, I will ask for a total versus Brandon on that. That way we could too also see what he does outside of Wesley Chapel. Okay. Thank you to everybody who came to the community conversation. There's some really great stuff that came up that I heard, and I got a lot of feedback from people who came. And it's really hard to get people involved, and we're all busy, so I appreciate everybody who took that time and their schedule to come. I really appreciate it. Okay. Next. Mike?
I said what I needed to at the beginning of the meeting under public comments. I'm good.
Lauren?
I would just say again, thank you to the steering committee for the comp plan and for the individuals who facilitated and attended and provided feedback on the community days. I think it's terrific to have that level. I mean, we've got a lot of high expectations for that. And I think as you look at that and you look at, like, we have 3 public hearings tonight, and some may think, well, these aren't that impactful or they're just very limited to everything else. But this is how the big picture gets built, is these little pieces at a time that close up loopholes and tie together what we have and what we want for our vision of the village. And so it may seem small or it may seem painful to get through sometimes, but us as we go and we look at these things and we find things and we clean them up, it's all for the betterment of the future. And I just appreciate everybody's efforts and patience in that. So appreciate all the volunteers that we have. Anyone else? Okay.
So thank you all for coming. We're going to go into closed session now, so feel free to adjourn yourself. Thank you for coming.
Good job.
Did I get a prize because we're out at 8:30?
Just my wife.
Don't jinx it. Don't
Yeah.
The word warp speed over the last 30 minutes.
Don't call it before it's over.
That's true. Are you going to the fun trip this weekend?
Was that?
Are you going on the fun trip this weekend?
You're going to Atlanta this weekend.
Nice.
I'm all over the place. Can't keep you still.
It'll keep me up.
Y'all have a good
Thank you, Bob. So I guess I make a motion to go into closed session for